Hi guys, it's another episode of Cake Basics and today is something really basic. Today I want to share with you my go-to vanilla cake recipe. It's really quick and easy to make and it tastes really yummy. So let's get started. Before we start making this cake, I would like to share a few tips with you. So before you start making these cake layers, you want to get the butter into room temperature. Well, that depends on the time, depends on which time of the year it is. So during the summer, I noticed that it's enough to take it out 15 to 30 minutes before you start baking. During winter, I usually allow it about an hour. So that the butter is soft. The same time you take the butter out, you should take the eggs out if you don't keep them at room temperature, and also your wet ingredients, so the things I have there. So I'm using kefir, but you could also use buttermilk or milk. So all these should be room temperature before you start. Then we are going to add the sugar to the butter. Don't wonder why mine is a mix. I haven't been baking a very long time, so I didn't have enough of the white sugar. That's why I'm using a mix of white and brown sugar, but you can use, or the recipe calls for, just white sugar. And then what you want to do is to just beat the butter with the sugar for about 5 minutes until it's nice and fluffy and soft and pale. And then once it's looking like this, so really nice and soft and pale and fluffy, you can start adding the eggs. Obviously mine is not as pale as yours will be if you're using just white sugar, so keep that in mind. Then you can start adding in the eggs, and you want to add them in one at a time and beat for about 30 seconds in between additions. And then once you've added all of the eggs, this is how it should look like. So nice and fluffy and soft at this point. Now we are going to add in the dry ingredients, or start adding the dry ingredients. And we are going to add them in batches with the wet ingredients. So first you want to combine your all-purpose flour with the baking soda and baking powder. And then you want to sift it in. First about 1/3. Then we want to give it a short mix on the lowest setting, just until it's almost combined. This should take only about a couple of seconds, and then you want to keep the mixer on low and start adding in about half of the wet ingredients. So I have the kefir here, which you can substitute with buttermilk or milk, and I have also added the vanilla to it. So at this point we are adding just about half. Then once it's almost combined, you want to add in about another 1/3 of the dry ingredients, and again mix on low until almost combined. And once you notice it's almost combined, you can start adding the rest of the wet ingredients. And then again, once you notice it's almost combined, add in the rest of the dry ingredients and again mix until almost combined. And then once it's combined, I said almost combined, but you want to look that it's all well combined before you finish mixing. Then you can remove the whisks. And then before you start transferring the batter into your baking tins, you just want to shortly mix through with a spatula just to check that everything is well combined also through the bottom. And if needed, just give it another whisk with the spatula, just to make sure that all your batter is well combined and it's nice and smooth. Then I've buttered my cake tins. I'm using 4 15-centimeter diameter cake tins, but you can find all the details how to substitute in the recipe, and the recipe, as always, is linked in the description box. So then what I like to do is I like to portion the batter with a tablespoon and divide it evenly along my cake tins like this. And then once you've evenly divided the batter between the cake tins, or if you're using one cake tin, then you just want to even out the batter at the very end. And then you want to bake the cake layers as instructed in the recipe. Then once your cake has baked, you want to remove it out of the cake layers. You want to remove them out of the oven, allow them to cool in the tin for about 10 minutes, and then you can remove them from the cake tin into a cooling rack to cool completely. So mine have chilled already. I also want to show you a trick how you can see if your cake has baked through without actually piercing it. You can obviously pierce it with a toothpick and check that it's baked through, but you can also do a bounce test. So if you press your finger onto the cake surface and it bounces back, that's also a clue that it's baked through. And then you just want to remove your cakes or the cake layers from the cake tin. I'm using a rubber spatula so that I don't damage my cake tins. Just releasing the sides and then it should just pop out. Because I'm using the cake tins that I use every time for these cake layers, I know that I don't need any parchment paper at the bottom, but you could also add a sheet of parchment paper here to the bottom of the cake tin, then it's definitely not going to stick. Just going to quickly show you how soft these cake layers are. It's really soft and spongy. And now I'm just gonna leave this to cool completely, and then what I like to do is to wrap them up and refrigerate them overnight, because then they're going to be even more moist and also perfectly cold for stacking the cake or for assembling the cake. So that's something I like to do, but you could just wait until they cool completely, so they're completely chilled, and then they are ready to be used. For the purpose of this video, I also want to show you how soft and spongy the cake is, how it looks on the inside, so that you can see the structure of the inside of the cake as well. Let me show you the inside. Really airy, and here you can also see how spongy it is. This is right after baking it, so I would suggest to use it on the next day, because like I said, I think it gets a little bit more flavor. But here you can see how fluffy and spongy the cake is on the inside. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. As I said, this is my go-to recipe when it comes to vanilla cakes. I use it for all my cakes I make when I want to use vanilla batter. And you can add, for example, berries to this cake. So you can just fold the berries in a little bit of cornstarch and then add, just don't overload it, but you can add a little bit on top of the batter and then bake in the batter. So that also works with these with this cake recipe. If you like this video and if you enjoyed this recipe, don't forget that thumbs up for support. And also, if you're new to my channel, then you can subscribe right now, and if you tap the bell, you won't miss any of my new recipes. For example, I'm also gonna share a chocolate cake version of this recipe. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching my video. Bye bye until next time.